So for the finale, let's create a orientation puzzle to play with and get intimate with all of our new systems. So we'll do an exercise I like to call working the corner. So I'm rotating my box and then I'm holding Alt so it just kind of snaps to a view. And then from here I'm just going to draw a box to begin cutting it out. And the first thing I'll do at this point is apply, because it's just much easier to grab all three of these and mark it, and then go in object mode and add a bevel. But I'll press L in order to change it to weight. And even though the shading is kind of breaking down, I know what I'm getting here by pressing Z. So we'll just click to apply, and then I'll shift click sharpen in order to roll down the auto smooth to get just the right amount. And then the next thing from here is to press D, switch over to box. You know, we can actually use just grid dots and we'll just bring out a box, but I'll press period in order to bring it out on center draw, and we'll press X in order to perform a slice. And so now we have our main box, which we can just put a bevel on and admire. However, we see the bevel doesn't actually catch all of the angles like this area. So just holding Alt and rolling the wheel should allow you to get where you're trying to go with that. And so the next thing is actually dealing with this piece. So first things first is I like to set up my alignment point. So for this, I'm going to just control click in order to align my view. And we roll the wheel while holding control in order to get the right angle. We can press E in order to just drop an empty. And from now on, whenever we're working, we can just go under mesh tools, control click align, and just control shift middle mouse button to roll between the various objects. And once you have an empty locked in, you can actually roll the wheel to change all the various types of perspectives that are available for that. So this isn't related to Boxcutter, but just useful to have when it comes to getting your view centered. The other thing is, now that we have this, we can actually jump back into that view again and just roll the wheel till we're looking at it exactly where we want. Maybe hold control shift in order to grab the empty, and we'll press Alt X in order to mirror, press V to mirror from view, and we'll just mirror this across to the other side, and this will just lessen our work and make our lives a lot simpler. So from here, press D, jump over to box, and if we press Shift V, we already know that we're in local. So that means that we're just going to draw to the local orientation of the object. That means that if we try to draw kind of adjacent to this edge, it's not going to work out. But every time we draw local, we know exactly what we're going to get. So, you know, the secret to working a corner is to not take away too much of the mesh, because that can be problematic. Another thing is that you also want to be mindful of using weight modifiers when it comes to our cutters, because in order to bevel individual edges, we had to use weight. Just like you saw me bevel these individual corners, if I were doing that using V groups, it would not have worked out. So the easiest way to deal with this would be to right click cancel, and we'll just put another bevel on top. And I'll just hold Alt, roll the wheel backwards just till we catch it on all the angles. We can Alt click sharpen just to fix our shading. And this area is a little bit of a curiosity. Why does it look so bad? And with that, we can now continue. So basically now if I draw my cut, we see that we're not actually having our cut interfere with a weight modifier, because weight data is just going to impact it in that aspect, especially when it comes to sorting it above. So there's a myriad of ways we could have overridden this sort, but sometimes it's just easier to put another modifier on top and allow that one to be sorted instead of the one that you wish to not be sorted. So just performing our cuts, traditional box, nothing major here. Maybe pressing T to add some thickness to that one, but we're still just using just our local orientation because it pretty much is doing the job for this area. It's all we need, just local orientation. However, you know, when it comes to Box City, I always consider cutting all the way through and terminating the shape and taking areas out to be a loss. So it's always the long con for me. Like, the longer that I can work the surface down slowly, the more interesting of a result I feel I'll be able to achieve. If I wanted to just align to this empty, I could just press Shift 1, Shift 7 to align to an object that's selected. So our view align system merely plays on what Blender already has. As always, we want to really highlight what it is that makes Blender great already through our work. So now with that, I can just orient this plane real quick and just perform a diagonal line down the middle. So now let's talk about working this side. So that's where I would press Shift V and switch over to nearest edge. However, let's stay in local, because we also know that we can just grab a dot and hold Alt in order to pull away from that area and perform an extrusion like so. However, we want to have an easier route, so let's just change this to nearest edge and let's just get to work. So we don't have to worry about dots or orientation or anything like that, except for this situation here. This is where I would probably now want to solve it using grid, because with grid I can now highlight the nearest edge, scroll it down, and just get in here and create my shape. Of course, it's a box, so the grid isn't going to simplify my shape too much. Let's grab this edge precisely, and we could just bring this piece down. We want to use ever scroll to bring that piece back though, so that way we can shift 7 with our empty and just perform a view align cut, isolate in this particular area like so. And we'll do the same thing here, except we want to grab an edge to align to in this area because nearest has betrayed us on an automatic level, which is why we need grid here to have our backs. So let's see what we're actually orienting to. This is looking pretty good. Usually after I get the orientation, I'll let go of control in order to kind of release myself from grid. Because grid lock is no longer a thing, that means now if you're holding control, you will snap, or not hold control, you will not snap, or vice versa. But there will no longer be a situation, hopefully, where either control or not control are both performing snap, which is the situation I refer to as gridlock. It's been a thing for a while, and I'm happy to announce that for this particular update we did do some things to try to mitigate it, so things should definitely be better. So I'm still reaching for that nearest edge. Sometimes it could be a battle, but it's definitely less of a battle than drawing the shape via trial and error. I'm not the biggest fan of pressing undo over and over, so you'll see me taking steps to always avoid undo redo in Blender, and that also comes down to sometimes using the F9 window. These things have just a habit in the past of ending my Blender sessions. So right here I used nearest edge and it just didn't work out, but you know what would work out would be nearest, but I don't want to press Shift V. Instead I want to pick this edge and bring this in, press B to bevel, press T to solidify, and we'll bring it out ever so slightly, and let's begin working the top. So we'll just bring this area down, but instead of a straight extrusion we'll press W and make it a wedge, just because we haven't put enough wedges in our surfaces yet. Wedges are one of my favorite forms of detailing whenever it comes to using Boxcutter. Also, now that bevel is being read on all levels for snap, which is one of the reasons it's now faster, you definitely want to be mindful of angling yourself on top of a bevel. So I will grab this edge, hold control, roll the grid down a little bit, and a little bit of inaccuracy there, I saw that. We'll be talking about that after the video. However, I did also point out that there can be some irregularities whenever it comes to smaller grids compared to normal, so that will be more than likely a study somewhere down the line, unless it's a technical issue with floating point numericals or something, and then we'll have to see. But you know, throughout all of these videos, even when I'm showcasing these products, I can always spot like a million issues and things that I want to improve even as I'm working. So sometimes I'll just kind of pause because I'm like making a mental note in my head of things to discuss with the team and point out. It's like, yeah, it was a good release. However, our work continues. We must immediately deal with this, this, and this. I know I'm terrible, but while I'm just BSing with you guys and just performing some cuts here, you can almost find a zen whenever you're just playing around with grid and box cutting and locating your orientation point. And this is the experience that I'm so excited to be sharing with you guys after we get this video completed, once this release is in your hands. Is, you know, orientation was definitely one of those things that I knew was one of our weak suits inside of Boxcutter. So anyone truly analytical was probably able to notice that that was something that we were needing to double back for. So with this shape, interesting and all, but let's try to take it to the next level. You know what I like to do with stuff like this is shift click Smart Apply to perform a duplicate. And with this piece, we can now perform an inset. This is a a type of workflow I envision someday coming to selection of Boolean and HardOps. But for now, it is something kind of delegated to SmartApply as a kind of experimental thing. But I'm always thinking about how we can get this integrated into other more interactive aspects of our tools, so that way it's a more intuitive experience. But even the process of getting in here and cleaning up doubles whenever you perform such a strong inset, I feel is probably essential. Otherwise, you're going to be dealing with secret doubles and booleans that are just not working. So now that we have this set up, we can perform a solidify, and then a bevel, or at least lowering the bevel. So we'll select this piece and the other piece, perform a difference, and now we have taken this piece to an angular city. And this is just, you know, this isn't one of those tests that you're supposed to hang on. It's just you know, if you're looking for a fun time, you know, give this a try to get acquainted with our orientation system. But by all means, definitely be testing this on more serious projects, because that's where we're aiming all of our efforts now. Or not even now, we always have. We've always thought about, you know, what about the end game of these tools? You know, it's good to make something that people can understand, but what about the version for people that already understand it? So this piece right here is just terrible. So you know what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to align my view to the empty, and then we can go in and actually look at this from the side. And all we really need is to get this point over. So I'm going to change my orientation method to view, which means I can now press GX and snap it here, and we'll just dissolve that single point, and the other side actually looks fine. There's always going to be a little bit of geometry management needing to be done whenever you're trying to duplicate and cut these things in, because if you have doubles, I seriously am warning you that it will come back to haunt you. In fact, you know, with every Boolean that you set up, the more complex it is, the more of a chance that you should spend a moment kind of inspecting the result to make sure that things go right all the way around, because so often a choice made with one bool will come back to haunt you with another one, especially if it's a shortcoming. Just one of those troubleshooting things I'm always pondering. So we'll do the same thing with this area. Just shift apply duplicate, press I, and control I, and we'll just give this some solidification and perform our difference. And we could do one more. I mean, we could do a lot more than just one more, but let's just have some fun here. So we'll press control I. We'll select both of these, and now we can look at this and say that we have worked the corner pretty nicely. However, circles are always a thing too when it comes to a work the corner example. So I have my circle, but it came out at 8 verts because I was making an example earlier. So I'll press Control D, it will change it to 32, and just perform an extrusion. And let's just shift it to live and select the top face and just Control click mark in order to perform a reverse bevel. And we see that our origin didn't actually go where it was supposed to on the cutter. And this is because of our origin option. So we want our origin to be on top of the center face. This one will set it to the bounding box center of the object. This one will set it to the center of the face that you initially draw. So let's try that same maneuver one more time. Even though I know we're redoing it from scratch, I just know it's going to be a heck of a lot easier this time because our origin options were set up from the get-go. So let's put one more here. And we see that things are getting a little bit slower, and that's because, you know, the Going's definitely getting tough with the amount of booleans and bevel work that we've created for ourselves. But let's take a look at our helper for booleans, and we see that we don't have any exact boolean set up on this at this time, so it shouldn't be too bad. But to speed things up, I am going to turn on pause mode, and for some reason even pause took a little bit of a hang there. You know, that, like I always say, there's always more work to be done in that pursuit of perfection. Perform the extrusion. While that extrusion is taking a moment, I will ponder why circle in pause mode is slow. That will need to be checked into if you're listening. So now we'll make another cut, and we'll press G and move it around, and we see that this cut did penetrate. For a moment, from the angle I was looking at, it didn't look like it penetrated, but we're good to go. So let's reverse bevel that as well. And just something about reverse bevel, just can't get enough of using it, especially on the hop side. I'm always pondering it. So now that we have our corner work, the first thing I'm going to do is save this as a cube box. Whenever I release the missing boxes, that's why the numbers are so low now on my cube boxes, because I deleted all the ugly boxes. So now I got to make nicer boxes to replace them. So I'm going to select this particular area, and we're just going to shift click curve extract in order to extract this area out. Of course, since this edge isn't going all the way in like it was, because we just extracted it and solidified it, it's no longer rounding it here or here. That means that we can actually remove the first bevel modifier. We could probably remove the first Boolean modifier too. We don't really need any of this. We can keep this top level bevel, but it doesn't appear to be doing much either. Okay, actually it is. It's affecting this area. So you know what, we'll keep that. But what I will do is go in edit mode and just select these 3 points and press Ctrl-Shift-B and roll the wheel till we get a fine result. And just to really top it off, we'll Control-click bevel to just add another bevel. And this piece is pretty much good to go. However, in the back, we will need to manually round this in order to make it look good. However, we could also try it non-destructively. So if I Control-click mark, it's going to look terrible. But if I hold Shift and I roll it up the stack, then I can actually get it higher up in the stack and get a very nice result, which is what we're seeing here. We want to add more segments to our bevel because, you know, faceting is just not good for anyone. And we are done. So this is our cube so far. When it comes to adding a ground plane, I like to select everything, press QOT, press spacebar, switch to plane with spacebar, and then just Control roll until I get the shape underneath. Press S50. Alt M, blank material, Control I, Alt M, Control clicking blank material to give every single one of these objects a unique material. And now we're ready to proceed. So we'll turn off snapping because we still have this dot. And because we have this dot, that means we can, this is like the most strangely oriented box, right? This is because we're still under nearest edge. So hopefully if I got any point across in this video is that if your orientation is going wrong, definitely use Shift V and look at your orientation sub panel. If you don't get Boxcutter, just stick in local. But once you start diving into Boxcutter, you definitely want to, I don't know which piece I am cutting. Probably neither. Let's press escape. Let's select the right piece. Bevel, 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 bevel. Just so many bevels going on with this shape. We Control tilde, we see that for some reason it's not letting our cuts reflect on this particular model anymore. So I'm definitely going to be wondering what's going on there, except I'm not going to wonder long because I got to know the answer. First we smart apply. Oh, you know why it's not showing? Pause mode. I'm terrible. Sorry. I'll undo. Leave pause mode off, and let's just bring out our box. And all I want to do was just perform a little slice to just give this area a runner up. And let's also give that a blank material. And now that I'm looking at it from this frontal view, my favorite thing to do afterwards is to just drop in a camera. We'll just scale up that camera empty so we're looking at it all the way. Jump over to Look Dev, press Alt VV, and there we are looking at our final result. Since we are using HardOps, we can press Alt VB and just roll the wheel until we get something that truly shows things the way that we want it to be shown. Like so. Something loud, but not too proud, but definitely loud. So now that we have this, we could set our frame range to like 2000 frames. That's about long enough to be a good ad. And if we let the timeline play, this is what we have so far. So usually what I like to do is I'll let the timeline play until it starts showing angles that I consider unflattering. And then I will, even though I have no overlay showing, I'm going to shift right click to place my 3D cursor there. You can't see it, but you just got to trust me, my cursor's there. If we press Q again with nothing selected, press Alt A to deselect. If I press Q with nothing selected, I can just add another camera, and this will be our result so far. And we'll let that play for a couple of 100 frames until about there. And now we'll place this in the center and pull out a little bit, and with nothing selected, shift click camera. This time we're going to add a bounce camera. Actually, bounce camera turned out to be a mistake. We actually want all of our cameras to go the right direction. So this time I'm just going to regular click, which adds another camera. And we're just setting up our shots for this turntable. So now that we're about here, let's look at this again. And we'll look at it right here. Place our cursor right there with shift right click, press Q with nothing selected. And this time we will shift click add camera in order to add a bounce camera. So now this particular camera will go one way and then bounce back and go the other way. However, with the length of our timeline, we might not be able to see it. However, looks like we caught it just at the end of a bounce. So once we get to about this area, we can, let's bring up view align, and holding Control Shift, let's try that again. Wow, I can't even see my empty and all of that. So I'm just going to realign my view. Probably need to select the face in edit mode. And then from there, I can align the view just like I want. And from here, let's set up another camera. So I have this area selected. You can see my cursor there. And we will just add a camera. And from here, there will just be this camera turning in this particular area to finish out this frame, to finish out this animation. So just a very quick animation using Hops cameras, but you can see all the cameras focusing on this area like it's a star. It's like, interview, you got a statement, from this area of the cube that we've been working. It's kind of funny, but you got to make yourself laugh when you're doing 3D. Anyways, Control Spacebar will just let this animation play, and just like that, within 23 minutes, we have ran through the exercise of what I call working the corner. So for this shot, just gonna have to extend this video. Sorry guys. This area, I don't know why it looks like that, but it's not gonna work. So what we want to do is actually improve the roundness here, because if I'm looking at this render and I have this very big area coming in looking so bad, it's just going to be an eyesore. So let's raise this to 24, which kind of breaks this area a little bit, but that's fine. We can do the same thing with this, change it to 24. Let's also select this surface, locate the first bevel, which is playing off of weight, and raise it up to 24. So we probably should have done that before we started doing extraction, but if I wanted to, I could harden the shape in 2D and then use subdivision to ease this arc, but we are approaching the 25-minute mark, for which I apologize. So with that, we'll just let this animation play out, and I hope everyone enjoyed this latest update. A lot has gone into it, and I'm so excited to finally be getting it out the door. There's so many parties involved with it. I must, of course, give a shout out to AR, Loof, and Proxy for their endless efforts with keeping Boxcutter not only afloat, but running well and continuing to move forward and get better. I have such high hopes for this tool, and alignment was just one of those things that we just had to get in and do something about. So with that, I will wrap up this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Usually I have on viewport denoising whenever I let an animation play. However, lately it's been looking a little bit fuzzier than usual, which is just not going to cut it. However, luckily Blender has settings to be able to improve this. So if we turn off viewport denoising, We can now let the animation play out where it's just a little bit noisier. However, it's also a little bit sharper and a little bit more clear with showing all the details that we've worked into this corner area of the cube. Of course, these issues with shadows won't be there whenever you render, but it will be there whenever you're playing it back in the viewport. But really, I just overlooked those things. However, viewport shadows always have driven me crazy. But with that, I can now truly wrap up this video, and I'll see you guys next time.